Hey, what's up? Sean here. Today I'm going to show you how I built an electric skateboard for just 139 Canadian dollars. For those of you in the US, which is most of you watching this video, that's about 100 US dollars. And if you know anything about electric skateboards, well, you'll know that you'd normally have to spend probably 4 or 5 times that amount to get a decent board these days. Now, the real secret to making an electric skateboard on a budget is buying used parts. The main reason I was able to cut down the cost so much was because I bought a broken electric skateboard on Craigslist for just $50, and from that I was able to salvage both the battery and the motor, which are generally the two most expensive components for any electric skateboard. So if you're looking to build an electric skateboard, just have a look around on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and things like that, because when people break their electric skateboard, there's a pretty good chance that they won't know how to fix it, in which case they'll probably try to sell it. So take advantage of that if you have the opportunity to. Now, if you're someone who wants to build this but is intimidated by electronics and things like that, then don't worry, because this build is super beginner friendly. In fact, when I was in high school, I dropped out of physics. So, trust me when I say that you certainly don't have to be a genius or anything to build this. And I definitely encourage you to give this a try, especially if you're a beginner like me. As for the materials, I used a 36 volt 2.2 amp hour battery, a pair of trucks and wheels with a built-in single hub motor, riser pads, an electronic speed controller along with a remote, as well as a micro USB to charge the remote. Usually these three will come together as one individual package. A skateboard deck, grip tape, 1/4 inch foam, craft foam, skateboard hardware, a skate tool, some kind of enclosure to house your electronics, a box cutter, cutting mat, hot glue gun, super glue, sandpaper, velcro, a belt, electrical tape, clear coat, a jigsaw, a hand drill, and some basic drawing and cutting utensils. Also, some things that I didn't have at the time of filming this were a charger for the battery. This is a 42 volt charger, as well as these random plastic clipboards that I just found at the dollar store, and finally some duct tape. So the first thing I did was I got one of my old skateboard decks that I had laying around and used a jigsaw and some sandpaper and just kind of shaped it and recycled it into a new cruiser style deck. Obviously you do have the option to just buy a new deck, but this is a budget build, so doing it this way is a lot more cost effective. Now, as you can tell from some of the excess pieces here, this board was actually pretty old and scratched up, but all you gotta do to get it smooth again is just sand it down, and yeah, you'll have a board that's basically good as new. And if you want to get it shiny like this, you can also just hit it with a few layers of clear coat, and that'll just revive the whole thing. And yeah, you can basically do this with any skateboard deck, even if it's old and scratched up. If you don't already have one laying around, just check Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, because used skateboard decks are usually pretty common for people to sell. Now onto the electronics. So as someone who is not an expert in any of this, I was kind of intimidated at first, but trust me, building an electric skateboard is not that hard. There are certainly more advanced ways that you can do it, but the way I'm showing you is super simple. It's literally just plug and play, and really the hardest part is just making sure you buy the right parts that are compatible with each other. But essentially how an electric skateboard works is you have the battery, the ESC, and the motor, and those are the three main parts. The battery is what powers the electric skateboard, and the ESC dictates how much power you want to send from your battery to your motor, and the way you do that is by controlling the throttle. And that's basically all there is to it. All you have to do is make sure everything is compatible. So for instance, in my case, I'm using a 36 volt battery and a single hub motor, which means I need a 36 volt single hub motor ESC. Makes sense, right? And so the reason this is important is because there are different kinds of motors and different kinds of voltages of batteries that you can get, and depending on which of those you get, you'll just have to make sure that the ESC is compatible with them. So what I recommend doing is buying your battery and your motor first, and then based on those two factors, you'll know exactly what ESC to buy. Because in the product description of that ESC, it'll just say, oh well, this is a 24 volt dual hub motor ESC, or this is a 36 volt single belt motor ESC, and so on and so forth. And so doing it that way will just make it a lot easier for you. Alright, so where were we? Well, after I drilled all the necessary holes in the enclosure and the deck, I started applying the grip tape. Now, you could either put on the grip tape before or after you screw everything onto the deck. I decided to put the grip tape on first, that way I'm still able to unscrew or tighten the bolts if I need to. But if you maybe wanted like a sleeker look and you wanted all the screws to be hidden, then you would just put the grip tape on last. But just keep in mind that if you did it that way, that you would need to take off the grip tape before you can access the screws. So it's just kind of a matter of preference, I guess. At this point, there were a couple of cutouts I still had to do, so one right here for the LED battery indicator, and then also one little hole for the cable running from the motor to the inside of the enclosure. Once all of these cutouts were done, I just went ahead and glued the power switch, the LED battery indicator, as well as the charging port. To mount the enclosure to the deck, I started just by finger tightening all the bolts first, and then after that I fully tightened them down with the skate tool. And I did the same for the trucks. Once you've mounted your enclosure, you want to figure out how you're going to house all your electronics. So this is the part that you're going to kind of have to figure out a little bit on your own, because the size of your battery and your enclosure and whatnot is going to vary. So you just gotta kind of find a way to fit it all nice and snug. Make sure it sits in there firmly. You don't want it to move around while you're riding. And the way you do that is just by using some foam padding. As for me, the way I managed to fit it all in there, first I plug in the ESC to the battery, then the charging port to the battery, and then from there I can slot the battery inside that foam insert that we made earlier. Once the battery is all nice and snug in there, I plug in the power switch to the ESC, and then the LED battery indicator to the ESC. After that, I connect the phase wires, which are these colorful wires here. This is super simple. All you do is you connect yellow to yellow, green to green, and blue to blue. Now if you find that your motor spins the wrong way, what you can do is, out of these 3 phase wires, you just switch any 2 random ones, and then that should fix your problem and the motor should start spinning the right way. For me, I didn't have any problems, so I didn't have to switch anything or anything like that, but if that does happen for you, then that's how you would fix it. Last thing we have to plug in is the hall sensor, which is this little white head here, and what that does is the hall sensor just makes your ride a little bit smoother. It just helps with like acceleration and things like that. So plug that into there, and then I also added a belt for like extra security, just to make sure, you know, everything would be nice and snug and nothing's gonna fall out or anything like that. So just fasten that, and then before closing the enclosure, just kind of, you know, stuff everything in there, make sure it's all snug. And then there's a couple more things I have to do here. One of them is, since the enclosure is cardboard, you can't really tell, but the enclosure is actually made out of cardboard covered in a very thin layer of plastic. And if that thin layer of plastic rips, then the cardboard would be exposed. So to prevent that, I just added an extra layer of this hard plastic from the clipboards, and then I just kind of wrapped that all the way around just to give it more durability. And yeah, and then the last thing I had to do is in between the lid and the enclosure, there's kind of like this little crack where water could get in. And since I live in a pretty rainy area, I did want this board to be kind of semi-waterproof, so I really didn't want water to seep in through there. So to fix that, I just put some foam there, and then when you close it, it just kind of seals it all together. And that's it. That's the whole build, and now it's ready to go for a test ride. Alright, so we're not going to waste any time here. We're just going to get right into a top speed test. If you look at the top left corner of your screen here, you should be able to see how fast I'm going. So let's go full throttle in 3, 2, 1. Went about 18 miles per hour or so. I'm not sure. I'm gonna look back at the footage and see exactly how fast we went, but I think that was pretty good. That's plenty fast for me, and I'm pretty satisfied with that. Alright guys, and as for the range, well, according to the battery and the motor that I'm using, I should be able to get like 9 or 10 miles of range. I was going to do a range test, but like an hour into it, I was like, forget it. Like this is good enough for me. Like 9 miles is plenty for me. I don't think I'm going to be riding this thing for like more than an hour at a time, so yeah, I'm satisfied. 9 miles is more than enough. And yeah, so if you guys liked this video, can you please hit the like button down below? It would really help the channel out a lot. And also, if you're new to this channel, you should subscribe, and that way you'll be updated with all my newest projects, and you won't miss any new videos that come out. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.